Welcome to GCU. I'm Kate Black, the founder of Magnifico.com and the author of the new book, Magnifico, Your Head-to-Toe Guide to Ethical Fashion and Non-Toxic Beauty.
I'm Jennifer Gilbert from ICO, speaking at GCU's Town Hall event about reinventing fashion waste.
Join. Jennifer Gilbert and I, we're big fans of each other's work, and I think that our work really kind of dovetails off of each other. So we're going to talk a little bit about fashion and the industry. I'm going to talk about a lot of what I think some of the issues are, some of the research that came up in my book, and then Jen's going to really talk about some of the solutions. So let me kick it off and tell you why I think I know some things about fashion. I started my career with this blog, which I launched in 2008. I was living in Tokyo at the time and really unable to work in my field. So I launched a blog that matched my passions and my skills. I have a background in digital marketing and online publishing. And I really, it was the era when Vanity Fair had a green issue, Vogue was going to have a green issue the next year. It seemed like this thing, eco-fashion, was going to be this huge kind of tidal wave and momentum. But I've imagined that people were going to have a hard time finding it. So I thought, well, what if we could create this source where people could find it? And so I created it, I fashioned it after Daily Candy, so it was a daily eco-fashion find. And every day I featured a designer or a brand who was doing something different, something that was really outside of the box, but the aesthetic was just so perfect. And I kind of wanted consumers to fall in love with these stories and these brand stories in the same way that I did. But I was living in Tokyo during 2011 when Japan suffered the trifecta of tragedy. So they had the earthquake, they had the tsunami, and then they had the nuclear meltdown. And it became really challenging for me to live there, and my love affair with the country became a little fractured because of this nuclear meltdown. So I emigrated to the US, and because I'm not American, I had a little bit of immigration trouble. So I was given permission to live but not to work. So I landed in the US in the beginning of 2012, and the lawyers took one look at my site and they were like, shut it down. And I was like, but I just write it. It's registered in Canada. They said, no, shut it down. Until your papers change and your status changes, which it has now, you cannot continue to work. So I was a little upset. I was a little shocked because now I lived in a country where I speak the language. There's so much vibrancy in this scene in New York, but I couldn't do anything about it. But I wasn't deterred. And so I launched this event platform called Eco Sessions in 2012. I thought, you know what, let's take the storytelling from behind the screen, let's take it off the screen and let's do it in events like this. Let's actually do panels where designers talk about how hard it is sometimes to be an ethical fashion designer or what the challenges are to create sustainable products. So I launched this event platform called Eco Sessions in 2012. I thought, you know what, let's take the storytelling from behind the screen, let's take it off the screen and let's do it in events like this. Let's actually do panels where designers talk about how hard it is sometimes to be an ethical fashion designer or what the challenges are to create sustainable products, and let's have them tell their story in front of consumers. And so we did Eco Sessions in Berlin, New York, Toronto, Boston, on a whole series of topics. And it was fantastic because consumers really love this experience and they love this kind of interactivity. But every single time we did Q&A, the questions always surprised me. Why are natural dyes better? What's wrong with conventional dyes? Why do we need non-toxic beauty anyway? And I was really surprised because I'd been so enmeshed in this writing and so enmeshed in this storytelling that I thought the marketplace had grown along with me. And I just realized that I was incorrect. So when I was approached last year to write a book, I thought, oh yes, I have things that I think I should share. So I took the offer for the book, and I decided that it was really going to be an expose, and it was going to talk about all these things that came up in Eco Sessions and all these things that I really think consumers should know in order to make better purchases, in order to support designers who are really making phenomenal products in all of these sectors. And you can't talk about why natural dyes are important versus conventional dyes and talk about like the chemical content without talking about beauty products and why a face cream needs to be better than something else. And you can't talk about what you put on your face if you don't talk about your jewelry or your shoes. So the book does a lot of kind of some people call it the Bible, other people call it the textbook, but there's really a lot of discussion about textiles and about materials and about kind of this good, better, best when it comes to choosing the textile for a garment. And so the book goes over materials a lot. And it's really trying to give this literacy, it's really trying to give consumers this idea that materials matter, that what the things are, what they're made of affects not only their durability, how long they're gonna last, what their chemical compound is, what that's gonna do for you, if it's gonna off-gas, if it's gonna make air pollution in your house, like really kind of what's gonna happen to your choice, with your choice. But it also gives them all the words for all the choices. So I really wanted to make sure that now that we have environmentally friendly fibers, right? They mill algae in Iceland, and they make something called sea cell. And so a couple of designers are using it, and they think that the pH balance of this sea cell actually has a positive effect on the skin. And so they think that it's almost like an Ayurvedic remedy for skin. So you could wear a garment that actually contributes to your health, right? As opposed to wearing something that might detract from your health. I think consumers also really need to know about provenance. And this isn't so much our bias. This isn't so much like, oh, it's made over there, whatever. Everything is made over there. 98% of the things that we buy in this country are imported, whether that's clothing or shoes. So it's almost all made over there. But there means different things in different categories. And so I think it's really important to kind of understand the current situation. So this is a picture of the Greenpeace detox campaign. So Greenpeace has been running an extensive campaign since 2009, really kind of interested in what's going on with the chemical compounds in apparel, how that's affecting both the environment and our personal health. But that is kind of the important thing that consumers need to look at. When you're looking at the tag, I want you to think about, do I know this brand? Do I know how much this brand is working on their supply chain transparency? Do I know how much is being put into fixing this problem? So I wanted to come up with an acronym to help consumers be a little bit more conscious, to make more mindful decisions, and something that reflected this whole, do we need to buy it? So the first one for V is, do I need to buy it, and does it need to be new? Can I borrow it? My mom has a cashmere coat in her closet she's had for 20 years. She never wears it. It fits me like a glove. I love it, and every year I say to her, Mother, please give me this coat, right? Why collect dust in one closet when it could be so devoted upon in my closet, right? So do you need to buy it, and does it need to be new? There's 25,000 consignment stores across this country. There's a lot of different choices. Could you buy something that is supporting a creative community or a culture that is maybe diminished around the world? The UN is both involved, the Smithsonian is involved. They're really trying to capture and save these culture and creative communities like Kenyan beaders and Javanese batikers and all of these kind of communities that are getting pushed aside from mass production and our quest for cheap clothes. So could you take that money that you saved by buying something secondhand and buy something that really had an impact in a developing community? And then why does it need to be halfway around the world? Could you take that money and support a local designer? Could you support somebody in your own community who is really kind of being mindful and thoughtful about the things that they're producing? Could you support something that's upcycled? Jen's going to talk about all the opportunities that are available for upcycling. Taking something that is basically ostensibly on its way to a landfill, but a designer has put design thinking and design strategy into making something that really has value and beauty. Right? And then the last one is this catch-all. And this catch-all, because ethical is the new black, we've all heard it, but what does it mean? Right? And I want it to mean something for everybody. So I use this analogy in the book, and I say, if we had a dinner party, we had a couple bottles of wine, and we decided to have a debate, what's more important? Human rights, planet, environmental rights, or animal rights? We'd likely have a very lively debate. And they don't necessarily intersect when it comes to fashion and design. And in my world, in my beautiful view, you can dress like this. You can have non-toxic beauty products, personal care products. You can wear things that have been certified clean for you and for your family. But the biggest issue is that all of this happens before the consumer takes the product home. But most research says that once the consumer takes the product home, 2/3 of the carbon footprint happens then. Happens in the washing, the cleaning, the taking care of, and then the afterlife. So we're asking brands, I'm asking brands, and I'm asking consumers to move towards brands that are really being more thoughtful in the production, But now we need it to go further. We need brands to make products that have better care instructions that kind of help the consumer figure out what to do once the consumer has taken it home, because we're having a real problem when consumers are taking it home.
Kate had mentioned that there's 90 billion garments that are being produced around the world. I think it's important to say that in terms of Americans, we are consuming 20 billion garments a year. Statistically, that's about 68 garments and 7 pairs of shoes a year for all of us, or 1 item a week. There's a lot of consumptions going on. And when you think of that consumption, you also have to think about the fiber that is being produced around the world to create those garments. And right now, there's 101 billion pounds of fiber. And there's a lot of stats. What that is doing to our environment in terms of carbon footprint, in terms of water usage, is pretty astounding. In terms of all of us and what we're doing in terms of the environment and our goods, the EPA says that each one of us tosses about 70 pounds of clothing and textiles away every year. So it's about 2 big garbage bags. That equals 28 billion pounds. So we're saying we're discarding 28 billion pounds, but only 15% of it is really getting put into the recycle stream. That's bringing it to a charity, that's bringing it to an ICO location, but only 15%. And I have to say I was really surprised when I started working with ICO. I always thought that was higher, because I think we all say, oh, I never throw anything away. Well, just think about that pair of hiking boots that you tried to give away and no one wanted them because they were so beat up, and they automatically just end up in your trash. Well, what does that mean? 85% is going to landfill or incineration, which is 24 billion pounds. The sad thing is, with textiles, 95%, if not more, is reusable and recyclable. And there's other things that are not, but this is pretty horrific because we can turn this around. And the environment is a big reason why. Just 1 pound of textiles in a landfill emits more than 7 pounds of CO2. And some of you in the audience might know this, but 1 t-shirt takes 700 gallons of water to create from manufacturing to the final. But ICO was created because we really wanted to take care of that problem. Our goal is to eliminate textile waste around the world and work with the industry and the consumer to do that. One of our key programs is the Take Back program. You can take any of your clothing and shoes, no matter what brand, no matter what condition, as long as they're clean and dry, and they'll take them back and they'll give you a reward for that, because they do want to say thank you. So whether at H&M it's 15% off your purchase, at North Face it's $10 off a $100 purchase, but it's really to say thank you and to really get us all motivated to do this. The second thing ICO does is really work with the industry on their overages and damages and returns, because there's a lot of waste going on that path. So, and a lot of it being handled not in the best environmentally conscious manner. So we make sure that we're working with our partners to look at the back of the house as much as it is to help the consumer in the front of the house. And then last year, it was an important move for ICO. We decided to take on a city project. San Francisco is the greenest city in the United States. They're at 80% waste diversion, and they have a goal by 2020 to be 100% diversion. So we approached them and said, well, how much textiles in your waste stream? And most cities have no clue on the textiles. They know everything on bottles, cans, everything, but not textiles. So they went back to Recology, which is their waste company, and they saw that 20,000 tons a year, which is about 4,700 pounds an hour, is being sent to landfill. So we've instituted a program with them, which is really a whole infrastructure between charities, waste management, consumers, retailers, and so we're hoping really to get that down to zero by 2020. The key for ICO is to create a closed loop system so that when we do collect this, that it's never going to hit landfill. Now, it's going to take a while to get there, but this is an explanation of it. So the top of the circle, it's all about point of collection. So it's bringing your items into a location that'll take that. From there, we pick that up and we sort and grade into over 350 categories. And the key thing is it needs to find its next best use. And that next best use is really that inner circle, which is rewear. And I'll talk about these a little bit deeper in a second. Then, if it can't be that, it goes into a recycling mold in a couple of phases in there. And then the goal is to produce product from it, sell it back in store, collect, and it turns into a closed loop. This is what one of the collection facilities look at, section bins at a North Face. That is a flyer that explains exactly what happens, and they are giving the $10 off a $100 purchase. This is where it ends up. These are facilities all over the world. The key thing here is the bag system is mechanized, but the grading system and sorting it is all hand sorted, which is very time consuming. But I always laugh and I said that these women and men have to figure out that this is not trash. That this, which is quite shocking, this $100 pair of little is not going to go into recycle. They know that this has another market someplace. So the graders have to know exactly what's on fashion and what's going to sell, what's not. That is a key part of the future, which I'll get into later, is how the industry has to change on that standpoint. So as I said, the first part is rewear. Rewear is extremely important because everything that we're wearing now, if it's rewearable, it needs to be reworn. All the water, energy that went into making that needs to continue its life as long as possible. So this is about secondhand markets around the world, creating jobs and extending the life. The next step is the recycle, which is in that circle. Recycle really starts at this waste hierarchy, which is followed really in Europe more than the United States. But the first thing is to say, is it absorbent and can that be turned into wiper? This is as simple as it gets. It's taking sweatshirts, breaking them into these wipers, nothing fancy, but then this is a whole market around the world for builders, paint, automotive is huge in this. It's great until they're no longer needed. This does become waste, but at least it's extending its life. Lots of designers, and you've seen this, Etsy, it's taking existing and turning it into another product. Sometimes people call this upcycling, some people say repurposing. I have to say, I think we're all confused at certain terms. That's a whole nother discussion. But this is just old jeans, old leather, turned into a beautiful purse. Then the next step is downcycle. So if that is of a fiber content that is 100% cotton, 100% wool, 100% denim, right now we are mechanically recycling that. So it's taking it, breaking it down into the first cuttings, the second ones, and then to something like this. It's fiber. That fiber, right now, the majority of it is being turned into insulation. So this is 100% denim, and this is t-shirts and wool sweaters. The automotive world has been using this for quite some time for all the insulation. Open up the back of your car, you see that gray in the back, that's usually recycled material, and the stuffing is being used for upholstery. So this, and as well as the building community now at Home Depot, you can actually purchase the insulation. The only bad thing of the insulation is the fire protectant, which is code. But you don't need a mask, you don't need gloves, you don't need any of that. So this is a great extension of the life, but it's still downcycling because it doesn't have another life once that building's gone. But that's okay. Hopefully in 10 years, 50 years, when it's turned down, there's going to be a solution for that. The final is really the true upcycle, is taking that fiber and being able to spin it so that it can turn into another fiber and can be turned into new clothing and shoes. It's this very, very small percentage of that happening now because there just needs more innovation, more technology. This shows really the magnitude. We're starting to just map out all of our partners so that we can help our supply chains to create these products, from spinners to recyclers to sorters, because it's going to take a collaboration amongst the industry, amongst everyone to make this change. Because ultimately, we want to enable sustainable consumption. And it comes down to the industry to help get us there, but it's really coming down to you and I, because everything that we're wearing is going to be the raw material for the fashion industry in the future.
Explain to me why the landfill numbers are so high. What's wrong with America?
It's just not America, it's around the world.
Okay.
We happen to have a low, just to put a point, we're 15%, Europe is 20%, even the UK is much higher than that, but then there's other places in the world that's like 2%, if not zero. But in the US, there's a lot of discussion about that, But bottom line, there's more people. That means there's more consumption. I mean, we showed you the numbers of the number of garments people are buying, which means that there's just more textile out there. But there's also more of a thought of it's disposable. That's really changed over the generations, and feeling that it doesn't matter, it's out of style very quickly, so I'm just going to dispose of it. But it's also because we're too busy. It's not convenient to go drop it off somewhere, especially when you live in a city environment. And we believe that if it's more convenient and rewarding, that more will do it. But above all that is education. Because I bet none of you knew that there was only 15% collected, or that you could even go to an H&M.
How many people here donate their clothes? Oh, yes. We're preaching to the choir, apparently.
But everyone says that, but when you really start looking at some of the things that aren't accepted when you bring them somewhere, whether they take them on or not, that usually turns into waste. But I'll just tell a story. My dad, I went to go visit, and on top of the trash can were there's a pair of hiking shoes and a pair of gym shoes. And I thought he was just joking with me because he knew what I did for a living. He said, no, he went to 5 places and they wouldn't take them because they need to resell them, which is how they support their efforts. And so he had nowhere else to go. So he truly was throwing them away.
It's also a challenge, right? Because if you're donating, you have to donate in season, right? Or the consignment or the charity shop is not going to be able to use it if it's not in season. And most people do this cycle, or at least I do. At the end of the season, I'm like, okay, it's the end of winter. What am I not going to carry on until next winter? But that's not the time that consignment shops can use it, right? Because now they're already onboarding summer and summer wear. Okay, so our first question. New York City is home to many fashion companies who generated literally tons of textile waste every month. What's your vision for how fashion companies could recycle textile straps, headers, cut-up garments, etc.?
As I mentioned before, that's considered post-industrial waste, and that is a huge issue. I have to say that more manufacturers are thinking about that, especially around the world, which is much better than it was 5 years ago. The problem with a lot of that is the blends, and to be honest, a lot of the manufacturing here, they'll call and say, I have a whole box of this stuff, but we call it a monstrous hybrid. So you've got all different types of materials, and there's scraps, the 1 inches, the headers, they'll throw the ones with the cardboard and the staples, that can't get thrown into a shredder, even if it was 100% cotton, and the manpower to take that apart. So it's an issue that I hope through our R&D can be thrown into something to be able to melt it or do whatever to turn it into something usable, but it's extremely difficult when it's all mixed together. If the industry started separating, I talked to a lot of companies about that. If you guys want to separate your cotton from all these different categories, then it'd be much easier, but that's a lot of effort for them to do as well. So it's a great question. It's certainly not solved.
With so much innovation happening, will we see major change in our lifetime? Or if you had to identify the 1 or 2 most impactful types of interventions, either public or private, what would they be and why? So how are we going to fix this mess?
It's fixable. That's the beauty of it. And I think it all, sorry, I just kind of go. It really, like I said earlier, it all starts with us. Because everything that's on our backs is going to be the raw material supplier to the industry. So if you think about that, you'll never throw it away. And then the industry will use it, and it'll just become a closed loop. But you have to tell your friends and tell your friends, and it continue on. And to this point of you in schools, that's why I like to go out and speak, because the younger generation isn't jaded or a lot like we are. So when I go there, they're the ones telling their mom and dad. They're the ones separating their shoes out. So I think that's a big part of it. But it's definitely changing in the future. And on the design front, it's talking to designers to be able to have the materials and the information to make these decisions. If just a little side note on that, it's cradle to cradle philosophy. And the cradle to cradle philosophy is you design in the beginning for reuse, so you know what's going to happen next. And there's a lot of work. Product Innovation Institute, Fashion Positive, to help designers because they need to help us. So it's a collaboration, and it's happening. It is happening.
And I think so too. I think like if you're gonna switch and change how you're buying and how you're consuming, so that you're doing maybe this hybrid, or if some things are secondhand or some things are borrowed or rented, and spending more money on fewer things like made goods, then also think about what the impact is once you take it home, right? Stop dry cleaning forever. That stuff still off gases in your house once you bring it home. Like Teflon pans, dry cleaning out. And then really think about the second owner. Like, you know, take your shoes to the cobbler and get them rehealed and get them resold, and try and extend your life, or make it so that it has a really good rewear life with the next owner. I think that's kind of something to think about when you're going to make these investments in these clothes.
But I feel like when you come to town hall discussions like this, everyone has different perspectives, and there's so much to learn, to absorb, and to be inspired by. And I wanted to come tonight and just to learn more about living a sustainable life in the whole fashion industry.
As conscious as I think that I am every single day, what I learned from Jennifer and Kate today was that I constantly, no matter what, have to look at what I'm doing just to make sure that I can continue to fine-tune and make sure that I'm being as sustainable as possible.
There's 24 billion pounds of textile waste going into our landfills. We all have to do our part to eliminate textile waste to make a happier, healthy world.
The current state of fashion today, the industry is producing about 90 billion garments per year, and most of those are from virgin materials. Something has to change, and consumers can make that change.